A Literary Critique of Trifles, a play by Susan Glaspell. Francis Powell is your critic. What follows is a discussion on the gender roles in the play, the reason why women can figure out the crime while men are stumped. It also evaluates whether Glaspell's portrayal of male and female characters is fair or not. The play is set in the utter vastness of the rural Midwest in the early 20th century. In addition to its remote location, it is cold, dreary, and generally inhospitable, confined to the locale of an old farmhouse. Mr. Wright wanted it this way and possessed the power to keep it this way. The level of his control is very apparent when Mr. Hale divulges that I spoke to Wright about the telephone once, and he put me off, saying, "Folks talk too much anyway." Based on Mrs. Hale's representation of the young, outgoing Mrs. Wright, she would not have felt this way and would have appreciated having the phone. But that was not even given a second thought by the controlling and manipulative Mr. Wright, whose intention was seemingly to isolate her. Joint protagonists Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Peters accompany the local lawman as they attempt to establish a possible motive behind the murder of a husband by his wife. Despite a lack of official status and their relative confinement to the kitchen at the crime scene, the women are able to assemble convincing clues as to a possible motive. However, due to their treatment received at the hands of the men, they determined to withhold that critical evidence to the case and actively conceal it. Their treatment, their confinement, and their lack of status all are a product of contemporary gender roles and go a long way in establishing their reluctance to assist. But it also provides them a basis for finding the clues that were totally obscured to the men. Indeed, in the very choice of her title Trifles, Glaspell points to an inherent bias that runs throughout the length of the play. This bias can be characterized by the trivialization of whatever the women say and their practices. The actual definition of trifles is a thing of little or no value. As evidence of this, critic Alcalay Gut points to the passage, "Oh well," says Mr. Hales, with good-natured superiority, "women are used to worrying over trifles." This patronizing tone shows itself consistently in the jokes that are always at the expense of the women's intellect. The women are condescended to throughout, which speaks to the prevailing bias in gender relations. Gender roles are central issues addressed by Glaspell in the play. She effectively uses her characters to provide a measure of insight into the gender issues that prevailed in the early 20th century American heartland. When the sheriff declares a sheriff's wife is married to the law, it has huge implications as it sheds light on contemporary gender relations, typical stereotyping, and where the vested power lay within society, and even within the law, and especially within the law. If the woman is married to the law, it implied that the law is male, and thus women are subject to patriarchal control, even at the highest level and the critical legal level. The realization of this implied male bias within the law, coming as it did after a series of slights at the women's expense, will certainly have provided a basis for Mrs. Peters' rationalization of her decision to close ranks with Mrs. Hale against male domination. From the outset, there is no doubt that the men are in charge of the entire sleuthing mission. and the women are placed in their area, the kitchen, more to get them out of the way than in any expectation that they'll be offering material help. This segregation, or polarization, serves to accentuate the relative status of male versus female in the early 20th century. The critic Alcalay Gut points out that the women are in the kitchen and the kitchen work is trivial, while the men study the layout of the house and the barn, gathering what they consider to be significant information. With this being the prevailing situation of the era, it is unsurprising then that all the professionals on the scene are male, while the women just tag along, not only without official status, but being unable to obtain it, even if they wish to do so. You see, the men do the real work. Women have no access to societal advancement. This slide is to be filled in. Allow 1 minute. This slide to be filled in. Allow 1 minute. This slide to be filled in. Allow 1 minute. In Trifles, Glaspell provides a very poignant look into patriarchal society and the dangers that it poses to the equitable dispensation of the law. And ultimately, the very practice of the rule of law is jeopardized when people feel compelled to take the law into their own hands to receive justice. It is indeed a play for the ages and worthy advice from a time that is best left behind us.